Welcome to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where we share stories about folks that are mistaken for employees by irate customers. And the first story is, I'm not your B&B, you just climbed into my backyard. My neighbors are Airbnb-ing out their home while they're in Europe. It's been a pretty problem-free experience. Until today. Residential, not retail. Mods, please remove this if it doesn't quite fit here. Yesterday, I was studying at home. At midday, I saw a car pull up in front of my neighbor's house. A couple exited and immediately went up to the front door to knock. As time passed and no one answered, they started exploring the property, presumably searching for someone. Unfortunately for them, no one was home. This is where things started to get interesting. The man, growing increasingly agitated, decided the sensible thing to do in this situation was to climb over a fence into my neighbor's backyard. As I watched, perplexed by his decision-making, I saw him wandering around, knocking on and then trying to forcibly open the back door. It was a rather amusing sight. That is, until he gave up and decided the next thing he'd like to do is climb the fence from my neighbor's backyard into mine. Oh no. At the moment, our landlord is building an extension to the house, and immediately I'm worried that this man might accidentally injure himself on the construction site. I rush out to speak to him. What I met with is an out-of-breath, red-faced man and a woman whose face looks like a smacked A, rapidly descending down my driveway towards me. Knowing a little about my neighbor's arrangement, I initially try to help. Hi, are you guests at our neighbor's Airbnb? Check-in isn't until 3 o'clock p.m. I don't think you'll find anyone there at the moment. The lady, now upon me, was unhappy after hearing this. You need to let us in the house! I'm taken aback. I'm sorry, I'm not your Airbnb host, I just live next door. You should get in touch with neighbor as they'll be able to help. Ignoring the perfectly rational advice I've given them, the lady starts turning a deep shade of red, her partner silently glaring at me, his face beginning to contort with anger. They told us we could check in at 10 a.m. You should really contact your host. As I've said, I'm just the neighbor. This only seemed to anger the couple more, and the lady immediately started shouting at me, You need to let us in or I am calling the police. Wow, at this point I'm getting pretty annoyed. I tried to explain the situation to her again, but only got so far as I can't let you in before she cut me off. Let us in or give us our money back. Now, in her increasing anger, coherent sentences started to break down, which in hindsight was pretty funny to watch. It became a series of, you told us 10 a.m., give me back my money, and more threats to call the police, who would apparently get them a refund. I've never seen someone get so belligerently mad in such a short amount of time. At this stage, I'm done with being polite. Lady, I am not your Airbnb host. You, gesturing to the man, climbed over the fence into my backyard, which is why I'm out here speaking to you. You both need to leave and contact your host. I know that their check-in isn't until 3 o'clock p.m. Being forceful at least interrupted her tirade, but she was still mad. As I watched her, I could see her slowly starting to process the situation. Despite this, she wouldn't apologize or admit she was wrong. Instead, what she blurted out next was, Can we at least store our luggage with you then? What? She repeats herself, this time much louder, apparently still under the delusion that yelling is the way to get what she wants. Nope, you're not leaving anything with me. After a further brief exchange, they left, and I immediately let my neighbors know what happened. Now here's the justice boner to the story. My neighbors were annoyed, really annoyed. They tried to contact their guests, but they wouldn't answer their phone. Eventually, they let Airbnb know what happened. Airbnb tried to reach out to them too. Again, the guests were uncontactable. During our exchange, the man let me know his name. Let's call him Bob the T. As it turns out, the booking was made under a completely different name. Both my neighbors and Airbnb tried to verify who was staying, but Bob wasn't responding to their calls or messages. Eventually, Airbnb decided to cancel Bob's booking. I wrote a note letting Bob know he needed to check his Airbnb messages and that his booking had been canceled due to the situation this morning. At 3 o'clock p.m., the car returned, this time filled with 4 more people. Apparently, Bob the T was trying to sneak in a few extra unpaid guests. I watched the quiet resignation on their faces as they read the note. It felt good. As an aside, my neighbor managed to rebook the dates with a lovely Chilean couple, and Airbnb honored the payout for the insane couple's canceled booking. My neighbors insisted on giving me a portion of the payout for my trouble, but honestly knowing that these horrible people were inconvenienced was enough. The second story is, you're in the wrong country if you think people are going to do that for you. So I browse this sub regularly and have a little chuckle to myself, thinking about how people can be so dense and not realizing the customers aren't staff. But I've never had anyone think that about me. Until yesterday. Apologies if the formatting is off since I'm on mobile. Here's your important background on me. I'm a British national who has been working in another country for a couple of years. I haven't been home at all during this time, so this year I saved up all my holiday, okayed it with my bosses, and decided to use it all on coming home from now until the new year. My flight touched down mid-afternoon yesterday at Big International Airport. I had opted to hire a car to use since I'm planning a couple of day trips to visit friends who now live across the country. It just so happened that the company I was going with had an empty-to-empty fuel policy. There was just enough fuel in the car to get you to the nearest petrol station, and you didn't have to bring it back with any specific amount of fuel in the tank. This all begins at the petrol station about 5 minutes down the road from the car hire place. I feel like this isn't a surprise to anyone reading, apart from the antagonist of this story, but she appears in a minute. But in the UK, on the whole, we fill up our own petrol tanks. People paid to pump your petrol for you are not a thing. If you go into really rural areas with no other petrol stations for miles around, you might get a hand from the one member of staff there, but that's it. This is the same in my country of work also. You mostly pay over the counter in the shop connected to the station, but for some of the chain petrol stations you can pay at the pump itself via a pin machine. Sorry if this is like teaching your grandmother to suck eggs and you know this already. It just so happens that this petrol station in question had the pay at pump option. The queue for paying behind the counter was massive, so I decided when I pulled in to pay at the pump. There was a bit of a wait to get a free pump, and while waiting I noticed out of my window that a car just turning into the petrol station was a hire car by the same company as mine. At the time it was just something to spot, but I didn't realize that I would be front and center in their crosshairs. I eventually pull into a space, get out of the car, and start filling it up. I finish and reach into my pocket to get my card out to pay when there's a tap on my shoulder. I look across and there's an, I would guess, mid-30s woman standing there looking angry. I should note that I myself am a woman in my late 20s and was wearing the jogging bottoms and university hoodie that I had traveled in. So definitely a no discernible uniform at all. I'll be calling her Shouty American, SA for short. Shouty American. Finally someone appears. Can you tell these other cars to move so we can get into this space next? Me, tired because flying is draining and confused. No, they were here before you. Shouty American, but they're not with Car Hire Company. You are because your car says so. Get them to move and then get to pumping our gas. Me, I'm not employed by anyone, I just hired the car. Also, no one's going to pull any petrol in your car other than yourself. At this point I turned away from her so I could pay, and she did not like that. Shouty American, pulling my arm away from the screen. I don't want pet roll. The fact that she was trying to make fun of my accent was just odd. I want gas. We were told to fill up here, and if you don't do it, I will drag you to that office and watch as you get fired. Obviously, because she is on the verge of shrieking at me and has created a scene, a member of staff comes over and asks what is happening. I was going to politely explain that the woman just seemed to be a little bit confused over what she's been told by the car hire company, but she gets in there first. Shouty American, this employee of your partner firm Car Hire Company is terrible. She's refusing to pump my gas. Staff member, to me, do you work for Car Hire Company? Me, no, I just hired the car and needed to fill it up, and now I need to pay. Shouty American, no, she works for them. Look at the stickers on her car. They're the same stickers on every hire car. Staff member, to her, Madam, I don't think this lady works for Car Hire Company. I think we just need to let her move on so she can leave and we can keep everyone moving. We also don't have any contracts with Car Hire Company to begin with. At this point, there are about 8 cars parked behind the car that she was in, since the driver hadn't thought to move into one of the now many free spaces next to the pumps, and many more indicating that they want to enter the petrol station. But Shouty American seemed oblivious to this. Shouty American, I want someone to fill up my car now. I don't care if you fill it up with petrol and not gas. She seemed to have no clue that petrol and gasoline are literally the same thing. You're all lucky that I don't film this and stick it on Facebook so you all get shamed and fired. Staff member, getting annoyed as there were people shouting and car horns blaring because of the blockage. You're in the wrong country if you think people are going to do that for you. Please tell the driver of your car to move, or we will have to have the car towed for an illegal obstruction. I'm pretty sure this isn't a thing, but I sensed the guy was just hedging his bets that Shouty had no clue what the law was. She eventually signaled for the driver to move into a space, to the wonderful sound of British sarcastic cheers. It's good to be home, while the staff member apologized profusely for what had happened and offered me anything in the shop on the house. I went home with a tank full of petrol, a deluxe Christmas sandwich, and a good story to tell my family. That probably wasn't the welcome to the UK that Shouty expected, but it was the one she deserved. The next story is, just ring up my screws. I promise I don't work here, really. I ran to the local home improvement store last night for some screws and ended up browsing for a bit. Somewhere between looking at Dremel bits and contemplating a new soldering iron, I hear a man roar rather loudly. Roar? What do you mean you don't have any? This is like basic stuff. You gotta! I couldn't hear the employee's response, but it was rather short, and he walked briskly away to resume stocking circular saw blades. My next thing to check out was drill bits, situated right behind Mr. Roar. Me, excuse me sir, but… Roar, still shouting. Thank God, finally! Ralph, you said he was a really fat guy that looked like Santa Claus. This is a skinny guy in a baseball hat. Me, smiling. I don't work here. Roar. Well, F. He starts laughing and then gets a lot quieter. Roar. Sorry, man, I'm just giving my cousin a hard time. Am I in your way? Me. Yeah, I just wanted to peek at the rack behind you. Roar. I can't believe they don't have any easy outs. I'm trying to get a broken bolt out of my lawnmower and… Me. They're on the bottom right there. Roar. What? I scoot Mr. Roar away from the rack and grab a set of screw extractors for him. Roar. Man, I know Ralph doesn't normally work this department, but he told me they didn't have any. Doesn't matter though, these are too small. Me. There are bigger ones over by the sockets. Roar. Huh? Why aren't they all in one place? Me. These are for home improvement. The ones over there are counted as mechanics tools. Come on, I'll show you. I lead Mr. Roar over to sockets, point to what he needs, and begin to walk away to check out. Roar, loudly. Ralph! Ralph, he found them! I continued my beeline for the cashier. It failed. Just as she started her spiel on how to use the credit card terminal, Mr. Roar clapped me on the shoulder as he passed by to leave empty-handed. Roar. Thanks again. It's good to know that at least store management knows what they're doing. The credit card terminal went blank. Cashier. Sorry, sir. I didn't recognize you. Me. I don't work here. Cashier. You don't have to work at this location. The discount is for all company employees. Me. I don't work for your company. Cashier. Are you sure? Me. Yep. Cashier. Because company policy says… Me. Just ring up my screws. I promise. I don't work here. Really. The last story is… No, I don't work here, but it's fun to pretend I do. A while ago, I was at the local aquarium with a few friends who were new to the area. I've always been a keen animal person. I learned to read from basic animal fact books, and I'm full of weird and wonderful facts about Australia's wildlife. This definitely extended into the marine world too. You might be able to see where this is going. Since my friends are from the distant land of America, I take the opportunity to share my Aussie ocean wisdom with them as we walk through the aquarium. I always wear a cap that says Living Reef Ranger on it, so I don't blame the people for what happened next at all. In fact, I think it's a bit funny, and I'm actually proud of myself. As I'm explaining the social interactions of clownfish to my friends, I notice a mom with a couple young 8 to 12 kids with her listening to what I'm saying. I ignore her and keep talking on with my mates, but then one of the kids asks me a question about it. I happily explain, since everyone should know about nature. As kids do, he asks a few follow-up questions, and I explain in simple manner so they can understand. He politely thanks me and goes back to his mom. My mates and I think it's a bit cute, but we sort of brush it off and move on to the next section. But the family follows, and not only them, a couple others too. I am now giving a tour of this aquarium, and I am loving it. I get to completely nerd out with my animal facts. I feel so smart. I have the power. Until a youngish teen girl, 15, asks me how to get a job at the aquarium because she wants to be a marine biologist. I inform her, and hence the other people around me, that I don't actually know because I don't work here. A few surprised looks and a few people leave my tour, but I happily carried on. When we finished up, my friends thought it was hilarious people thought I was giving a tour, but said they felt privileged since it was free and they were VIPs. I hope you enjoyed these stories, and if you like them, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button. See you next time!